I've got a case study for you today about two clients I've got. It was a really difficult situation. I'm going to walk you through about what their situation was, how they got into their first home, what the problem was with actually finding the solution. And I'm going to talk about the three things I did as a mortgage broker to find the solution and to execute and get them into their first home. So this couple came to me. They were referred from another really happy client of mine who came from another referral, who came from another referral. These guys were in a particular position. I wouldn't exactly call it the average person's position. So client A, he had a fairly low credit score, so low that it's going to become an issue with a lot of the banks out there. The reason why the credit score was so low was there was a lot of applications done. The client had just recently become a permanent resident. Whilst he was a non-permanent resident, he was applying for things like car loans and personal loans and getting knocked back quite a bit. Interestingly enough, it didn't stop him from getting knocked back all the time, and he was able to get some of those applications across the line and buy that car and get that credit card he wanted. A lot of people don't know with your credit file, the more finance applications that you do within an 18 or 24-month time frame, the more it punishes your credit score. The lower your credit score, the harder it is to get a loan. And that's why this client's credit score was 508 when they came to us. Throw on top of that, they were first home buyers. So 5% deposit on the first home guarantee. A lot of people call it the 5% deposit scheme. Throw on top of that, the female applicant was a sole trader, so self-employed, done a lot better the last couple of years and growing. So definitely going better. Banks are not, however, super duper friendly towards self-employed people a lot of the time. And I guess I'll transition now from their position to how the bank looks at them, because they're two very different things. People can think they're good for the money, but the bank will look at it and go, well, we don't agree with you. So self-employed people, the largest problem banks have is being able to understand if a self-employed person's income is reliable. Just because it looks high in this tax return that was done, say for example in 2024, the 2025 ones which are due by end of May look totally different. They may be a loss. So from the bank's point of view, the lender's point of view, it's hard to figure out if they've actually got the income. And that's why they're very tough when it comes to lending to self-employed people. Throw on top of this sole trader was earning income from overseas. So it just threw up a few different things on their tax returns, ones that I knew would stand out to the lender. There are the issues there: low credit score, self-employed, and the first home guarantee 5% scheme needed. As a broker, how did I go about this situation? Well, firstly, I gave them an honest answer and I said, I don't know if we're going to get this one across the line. I need to go off and I need to do my research. I need to pick up the phone and speak with lenders. So the very first thing I did out of here is I looked at, okay, well, you're on the first home guarantee. I narrowed the lenders down for the first home guarantee. Not every lender has access to the first home guarantee. So what I did was I started off with the male applicant's credit file. And what I quickly found was that Housing Australia, who administers the first home guarantee, had instructed the lenders to assess these applications not as a guaranteed loan, which is a lot less riskier to the bank, but as they would assess them as if it was a 95% loan with the borrower paying for mortgage insurance. Now, the first home guarantee means that the borrower doesn't have to pay for mortgage insurance, so it is way less riskier. That's why people are allowed to do it. But what it means is that the parameters around assessing people and their eligibility for finance are a lot stricter. So what I quickly found was that most of these lenders, they wouldn't entertain a credit score below 608, and this client was about 508. So it was going to be a straight decline. If we had to put an application in with any of those lenders on the scheme, I think I got access to about 8 or 9 of them. They would have all declined it apart from one. So the only way I found this lender was by picking up the phone and calling. Quite a lot of these sorts of deals you can find using AI, you can find a solution. You can go on closed Facebook groups with just mortgage brokers in there and you can find a solution that way. But this way was just good old-fashioned detective work, picking up the phone and speaking to the lenders. What I found was there was one lender, and it was one of the main lenders in Australia that somehow can buck the trend and say, well, just because all of the rest of those lenders have to play by the government's rules, it doesn't mean we have to, because we're one of the big guys. So they said, look, put the application in and we'll submit it. As the broker, have to, give the bank assessor a story. Okay, why is this credit score below 508? Okay, well, he was a PR, he was applying for all this stuff, he didn't know he had to do that. He's since closed all of those credit cards off, and he's been a good boy. Something along those lines was good enough for the bank and the assessor to tick everything off. Fast forward, that to and fro actually probably took 3 or 4 weeks, if I'm being honest, because there's a lot of information to go through and there's a lot of checking to go through, because you don't want to go to the effort of submitting an application, putting another inquiry on the credit file, and then having it get knocked back or declined. If I could give the advice to a first home buyer out there, what do? Well, you deal with a professional when you need something done. Sure, if everything's mainstream for you, maybe you've got a chunky deposit, maybe it's 15 or 20%, something like that. Maybe you've got high incomes, maybe you know what you're doing. Maybe you've got what you want is pretty conservative for what you need. Maybe the finance solution for what you need is very simple. But generally, from my experience, that isn't the case. And if you settle for whatever your bank's offering you, generally you're missing something. So as a broker, my job is to find you the best solution. And that doesn't necessarily mean, well, whoever's promising the cheapest price. Because remember, guys, it's a 30-year loan. If you take out a $500,000 loan, for example, on average over that period of time, you're paying about the same for interest. So right now, I'm pleased to say that clients bought a property, they've gone unconditional. So they bought on the finance clause, they got the valuation done, gone to the bank, they've given an unconditional approval on that. Clients are wrapped. They didn't think this was honestly something that was going to happen for them, mainly out of not knowing. I also didn't know if I could get them the result up front, but it's the matter of following the process, getting the experts to work for you, and that's the best probability you're going to get the result you want. Now, these guys, they're in their own home, they get to look forward to their future life, and they don't have to worry about, will I be able to buy my first home, or am I going to get stuck renting with the rents going up forever? So, great story there.